Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Stand Out to Win, the secret to winning investors and customers. Thank you very much for your time in attending today's workshop, webinar. I do really appreciate your attendance. I know there are a lot of events out here on LinkedIn and you're all super busy. So I do make sure that there's a lot of value in what I provide, and I would value your feedback as well. Let me know what you think of the workshop. It's about 45 minutes long, so I'm hoping that that gives us a good amount of time for any questions that arise. If you have any questions, pop them in the chat anytime, and let's make a start. Okay, so you're here to hear more about a radical approach to increase the attractiveness of your science and technology startup, to win investors and customers, to get their attention to come to you as opposed to chasing them all the time. If I could just get that to work, that would be great. So, what to expect on today's workshop? There will be a few points where there'll be some interactivity. I'll be asking you to contribute via the chat or via polls. In fact, I think I've got a poll for you now. And when these two characters pop up, they're your kind of a reminder that there's no sitting back in this workshop and scoffing your popcorn like these two. It's where I'd like you to get involved. So as they're on the screen at the moment, I'll just put out this poll for those of you that are in the Zoom meeting. And then for those of you that are joining with a slight time delay on LinkedIn Live, just put what the main thing you'd like from this workshop into the chat for me, so that I can make sure that I'm delivering you the value that you turned up here to receive. So while that's going live, I'm going to tell you about the agenda for today's workshop. And it's not a sales pitch for my company. There is a little bit of one at the end if you want some extra help, but mainly I'm here to deliver some value about the experience I have working at the intersection between science, business, and funding for about 22 years, and the mistakes I've seen many startup companies make. So we're going to be digging into those mistakes that founders make, these ones that kill their commercial success, and importantly, telling you how to avoid them. So this isn't some sort of webinar where you have to register and sign up and to me to get the keys. I'm going to be telling you that in the workshop today. We're going to be focusing on the number one skill that investors say is the most important for founders to master in order to attract their attention. And at the end, I'm going to outline a bit more about my background and why I've come up with what the approach is, this new approach to guide the growth and marketing of science and technology companies. So the agenda hasn't really caught up with me there, but this is what we're going to be doing, just to recap. Okay. So before I start, just a quick kind of definition, because some of you may hear me talk about technology and assume that I'm just talking about information technology, digital. I'm not. For me, technology, it comes from the derivation of the word, applied knowledge. It's where there's a technological component to your product or service. It could be digital only, or it could have a physical component as well. But it's a little bugbear of mine. The world talks about tech as if it's only just information technology, when there's many more areas which need the help to get over into commercial success. So I'm here to support technology companies and to sort of give you an illustration about the journey, that I understand the journey you're going through, that building a technology company, growing it to unicorn size proportions, $1 billion valuation company, is hard, really hard, because not only have you got to do the things that every other company owner has got to do, you've got to start the company, you've got to get the finances in place, you've got to get the team, the product right. You've also potentially launching this company to sell and deliver a product that doesn't yet exist. So when I'm talking about technology companies, I'm really focusing on the ones where you're bringing something that's genuinely new to the world to the market. So it's not a case that you're getting someone else's product catalog and getting up to speed quickly. You've got to, at the same time as building the company, you've got to build an offer that customers really need. And I've highlighted that word need there because there's a big difference between providing a technology solution that customers just want, but they can live without it, or the other alternatives are okay for them, versus something that solves an unmet need, something that solves a problem that's currently unaddressed, something that solves it in a way that creates value for and solves a problem in the real world. And at the same time as developing and coming up with that offer that customers will want and investors will buy into, you've got to develop that product. So you've got to get funds for the development of the product and testing and regulatory hurdles, everything else that your particular industry sector will need. And obviously all of that takes a huge amount of financing. And you've got to do all of that whilst you're building the team, selling the company culture, being the salesperson for the company, and the other million and one things that a founder normally does. So these are the sort of companies that I help at PBM Consulting, because these are the ones for me that add the most value to the world, because they're coming up with something genuinely new to solve a real problem in the world. And that could be anything up to poverty, drought, inflationary conditions, all the way up to climate change. Science and technology has the keys to that, and that's why I do what I do. It's not all about generating returns to investors, after all. So let's get straight into it. The first big mistake that many companies make, which really hinder their focus of success, the chances of commercial success. Number one is to do all this fundraising, they go about it like they believe it's easy. And I think this is a fundamental issue with many founders, especially if they come from an academic background. They've put a lot of work into developing this baby of a company, and they've nurtured it to the current stage. And like any parent, they've fallen head over heels in love with their child. And the problem is they think that anybody else who sees their pitch deck, who sees their business plan, is immediately going to fall head over heels in love with it too. And that very rarely happens. And so this kind of false confidence, I think, tempts founders into thinking that fundraising is going to be easy. We'll just create a pitch deck, we'll create a business plan, we'll whiz it out to all the investors we can find on the internet and wait for the money to start rolling in. And guess what? It doesn't. And what I call this approach, I call spraying and praying, has about a 1 in 6,000 chance of success, because, and we'll get to that later. So, big mistake is spraying and praying. And I think I've illustrated that. It may seem like the cheapest and easiest option, but if it takes you 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, 2 years, I've seen it take 4 years. If a company hasn't got the offer right, but continues to keep believing that they have and keep banging on the same doors, they're working 4 years without significant revenue or the investment that they need. I don't know how they do that. And that's what I want to be helping stop. This 1 in 6,000 is too risky a bet for any founder to be taking. And especially when you consider what you're doing is putting all of that effort you put in, years of work into your company, probably your life savings, probably some friends and family investments as well. You might even have some early stage investors. You're putting all of that money on the table and gambling it on an approach that has a 1 in 6,000 chance of success. So that's the number one mistake that I hope to eradicate by this kind of education that I do through workshops. The next, and why this doesn't work, is because if you look at, and I've spoken to many early stage investment firms, if you look at it from their perspective, they receive between 3,000 and 4,000 pitches via email or LinkedIn DMs every year. And how many of those do you think they actually fund? Well, the answer, scarily enough, by this way, is about 6 companies on average. They receive between 3,000 and 4,000 pitches and only fund 6 of those. And that's where these 6,000 to 1 odds come from. And if you're interested more in the different approaches to fundraising, then I do run a secondary workshop, which is called Beat the Odds, Navigate Your Company's Fastest Way to Investment, which runs every other 2 weeks alongside this one. And there we go into the different approaches that you could use to fundraise. So that's problem number one. And what we're trying to do, just even to illustrate it even more, is develop something genuinely new to the market. This has a very, very high failure rate. And although this might be a very narrow definition of failure, in that the company has failed to attract the sort of returns for the investors that they were looking for. Nevertheless, that means that they'd be very unlikely to continue to develop and continue to receive funding. So the stats say that 9 out of 10 early stage technology startups fail. And I think that's a crime, because to me, that's unrealized problems, or problems not being solved in the real world, problems that science and technology could have solved. Those ideas not making their full impact in the world. And that's my passion, for making sure that science and technology does create value and impact in the world, not just create publications that sit on shelves and create dust. So I'm not going to go into a massive amount of detail, but it might be helpful for you if you consider this kind of journey that you're doing of developing something that's brand new to the world as a kind of a timeline of technology maturity. And that's what this is. It's actually a representation of something NASA came up with in the 70s called the Technology Readiness Level Scale, or TRL. It works from 1 to 9. And it basically takes you through the phases, the underpinning experimental R&D that makes your thing possible, all the way over to when you're implementing your technology on a scale that the market needs it and in full commercial rollout. But the problem is, and why this is so difficult, is because if you want some definitions of what they all mean in different stages, then there they are. If it's useful to you and you want to let me know, you want to get some engagement, do let me know in the chat what sort of TRL level your current offer is currently at. Are you kind of at the proof of concept stage, TRL level 3, or are you in a kind of a system prototype waiting for mass adoption, a kind of technology TRL number 7? And the thing is with this, is because the amount of money that is available for companies to do the underpinning research, whether it's done in an academic institution or a research establishment or a hospital, that the government often provides funding for that sort of research. And on the other side, the commercial funding, that's where early stage investors are playing. That's where the money is from sort of funds to scale up and latter into commercial income from paying customers. But the problem is that bit in the middle between something that works on a small scale and something that works enough that an industrial company could say, yeah, I can take that and I can integrate it, or a customer could take it and buy it. That gap in translational funding is real. There's a lot of funding available from the commercial sector. There's some funding available these days for government funding for basic research. Then in the middle, this translational funding to get from early stage prototype to later, something that interests the market, is very, very short supply. But this kind of is where we get this term of the valley of death, this lack of funding in the middle bit to advance companies. Oops, sorry, that was flicked on over there. To advance companies from that early stage prototype into something that's market ready is known as the valley of death. Unfortunately, that's where many of these technology companies go to die. So that journey ahead requires an amount of funding all the time. And really what the emphasis for me in setting up my company, PBM Consulting, was trying to avoid founders running out of money before they can secure their next funding round. In it taking you years, literally years of your life, chasing investors and following up all these emails and phone calls and meetings that have been held just to get that right investor. All those years without significant income or revenue. There's always the risk that the longer it takes you, if this problem is big enough and other companies recognize it, that a competitor will come up with something and launch it to the market faster than you can. And this process is exhausting. If any of you have been through it before, you'll know there's sort of war stories to be told and scars to be born from the fundraising process before. It's a difficult process. And that's where I really wanted to help companies. But most of all, for me, I want to avoid the fact that these science and technology projects of great potential value to the world, solving real problems for real people, making people's lives better, will fail to realize the vision that they started off with. And that's what I want to try and turn around. So to get over this valley of death requires an amount of development of your technology, an amount of funding to secure that development process, and also an amount of market building. And that's what we're really touching on with my approach today. Now, in an ideal world, you would cross the valley of death using a machine like this. And if you're a fan of the Christopher Nolan Batman movies, you'll recognize this as a military vehicle, rocket-powered, that could zoom over a valley or a river, towing with it cables that could build a bridge behind it. And that, in technology investment terms, that's the equivalent of getting an investor who joins you from day one and funds your development in your company all the way through to commercial success. And it does happen. You get the right thing, solving the right problem, you find the right partner, it can happen. But not everyone has access to the services of a billionaire philanthropist to do it for them. So you've got to find an alternative way to get across the valley of death. So what you do instead, and what most companies do, is they start to build a bridge. From the left-hand side, the research, the development side of their product, to the right-hand side of the valley, the market, where all the funding and the commercial success and impact and world fame is. And you've got to start building a bridge. And what many companies do is they focus solely on the money they need to build the next step that's ahead of them. And going back to technology development terms, that's the equivalent of getting funding just to develop a more mature, a more market-ready version of your prototype. So your fundraising strategy becomes very narrowly focused just on what money do we need to get to the next level of development for our new technology. And that's mistake number 2, focusing only on the money. Now, the problem this is that you may well be successful at receiving funds from an investor who gets the technology, gets what you're trying to do. But unless you're building it, there's a chance you could build the bridge and it can go off center. It won't be fully reaching the other side and what the market actually needs. And the other problem with being focused only on money is that you can tend to live, your company can live funding round to funding round, that you know exactly how long you've got left in the bank account, how much cash you're burning every month, how much you've got left, and you know when you need the next injection of cash by. And it unfortunately creates a mindset that the money that you're seeking is the prize, when in reality, it's the complete opposite. It's your offer, your team, your company, the opportunity to solve this big and pressing problem in a growing market. That's the prize. And when founders are focused solely on, we need this much money to continue for the next 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, or get to the next development level, they can forget that actually the real value here is the opportunity you're bringing for the investor to put in money into your company and then to have that 5x, 10x, whatever sort of returns they're looking for. So this is big mistake number 2. And when you do that, when you go around, thinking that the money is the prize, it's almost like you're going around with a begging bowl to your investors, looking for the next investment that you so desperately need. And that's basically putting them in a position of power, that they have all of the power and you have none of their money. So you're quite vulnerable then to getting that money in time, and it gives away the power and the value that actually exists in your company. So this is mistake number 2 and how to avoid it. How you do it is you build the market. You do build the market. You build a bridge across the valley of death from both sides at the same time. So as well as accessing the funding that you need for the next development of your products, you are also illuminating the opportunity that in the market that your technology company is solving, so that the commercial world, investors and customers, can start to be aware of what you're doing. So it increases the likelihood of their awareness that you're onto something that the market really needs. So what you're really doing is you're kind of like a lighthouse. You're broadcasting about your company, but not in the way that you think, not about by telling the world how great you are and how good your concept is and all the experience of your research team, you'll be talking about something different. I'm going to get to that in my approach. So the key thing is, though, in all this need to raise finance, in all this need to market yourself and raise awareness of what you're doing to the wider world, you're not alone. There are many other companies out there also seeking funds. There are 1,500, for example, in the UK at the moment that have been founded from UK universities since about 2011. And over, or just under half of them, are seeking investment for funding right now. So the competition to get in front of the right investor and to get the good deal done, it requires you to alert the commercial world, to alert investors to the scale of the opportunity that your science and technology company addresses. And you might be able to do it by the fact that you're working in a so-called, high visibility, in vogue, en vogue sector. You've heard much investment poured into things like AI, precision medicine, big data, IoT, e-health. These sorts of things are kind of buzzwords for hot and growing markets. But if you're not in one of them, how do you get that sort of attention from investors that you're looking for? Now, I will tell you how you do that. But first, let's look at the current way a lot of companies go about doing this. Big mistake number 3. And this is selling the product or the firm. And you might think, what's wrong with that? But what happens is, as I kind of illustrated before, when you're a founder, either from a technical background or an academic background, or someone who's been deeply involved in the creation of this product, you care so deeply about the technology that comes across in the way you present it. So you end up selling what the product is, what the research that went into it is, how clever the science is, or the track record of your firm and your institution. But that's not what investors or customers care about. You may have a deep passion in the way that your product works and the way that the solution works, but that's unlikely to be matched by investors who care more about other things. What do they care about more than anything else? Well, my research from working in this space for 22 odd years, 24 years now, plus the last 2 years of speaking on a daily basis with early stage investors, says that the number one thing that they value is the size of the market opportunity. Does your firm address an unmet need, solve a problem that is not currently addressed in a way that provides step change in terms of its outputs and its outcomes from its use? So is it a step change solution? Is it way better, way faster, way cheaper than the other solutions that have been out there? Those two things, the size of that market opportunity, whether that market is big and growing, that's the most important thing to them. Then it's how different your solution is to what's currently out there on the market. Then it's the strengths of your team. And world-class teams, I should just say very briefly, is not about your research pedigree and how many degrees you have and where you went to study, all that sort of stuff. It's about, does your team have the skills and passion that investors are looking for? They're looking for people that are passionately, they are all in on this concept. They don't want to be investing in those who have got a full-time job and this is a side gig. They want to be funding those who are passionate about launching this company to see it through until the end, through all the twists and turns of the journey. So that passion is number one of what they mean by world-class. And if you've done it before, then successfully you built a company and sold it to exit, that's a massive, great big green tick in the box for the investor. Otherwise, it's things like skills like resilience, tenacity, flexibility. Are you a founding team that's going to be able to be coached by an investor? Because most investors, in fact, 100% of investors, will not just give you the money and then let you get on with things. I'm going to check this is all working because I've not got anything on there. Okay. Yes, it is. Good. Okay, my apologies. Just checking the technology works. I was talking about world-class teams. And then last but not least, I'll get that my own way, is the technology itself. And if you're making this mistake of telling the world and selling on the basis of how clever and how unique and how innovative your technology is, then that's very much down the list of priorities for an investor. So mistake number 3, covered. What can you do about this? Well, this leads me on to what I found to be the number 1 skill that investors say is the key that all founders should master in order to attract their attention. And it's the ability to tell a compelling story. And it's not just a chronological history of the research you've done, the funding you've got, all the stages you went through to get to where you are. It's about, the story should be inspirational. You should give an impression to them of whom you are, why you do what you do, why the problem that you're solving matters and to whom it matters, and why you're the company best positioned in the world, where your approach is the best positioned in the world to take it forward. And this engaging story isn't just useful for you in securing investment, it also can underpin your entire marketing approach. It'll tell the investors how you'll attract further talent, business partners, and also it educates the customers as to why they should care about your product or service, and what problems it solves. And the story's got to be bold, it's got to be visionary, but it can't just be fanciful. It's got to be based on data. So if you think that your story currently, if you can't tell your story within a sort of 30-second, maximum 1 minute elevator pitch, and it focuses too much on what the product is, how it works, its features, how you got to where you are, then you might want to revisit this to make it more attractive. Because I want you to be telling stories as startup founders that are, resonate with your market, they're harmonious, and so that you can be seen for the rock star that you undoubtedly are. Hence the music puns. I am a drummer after all. Now, why this works is that something magic in our brains happens when we hear stories. When they're told correctly, if the story places us at the heart of the story, then we actually experience the activity in our brain lights up, the same sort of areas light up in our brain, as if we were actually experiencing the story for real, for ourselves. And it creates that kind of emotional response in an audience. That's obviously what you're looking for to get them to take action, to book another meeting, to hear more about you, to actually receive your pitch. Your story has got to create an emotional response in the audience so they take action on and they respond to your call to action. That's why it works so well. And stories fit in really nicely with a clever piece of marketing which underpins the way that really good, outstanding companies market themselves. And this is based on a framework that was developed by Simon Sinek, starting with Why. And they say that the best companies in the world don't tell the world what they make. So let's use the example of Apple. Apple doesn't do all of its ads based on, here's the new iPad, here's the new iPhone, it's got these features, it's got this specification. It doesn't even do its marketing campaigns based on how it works. So it's a unique chip, or its style, or its functionality, or anything that makes it, this design, the things that make it uniquely and recognizable as an iPhone. What they do instead, which is where he advocates, or Simon advocates, all good companies should start from, is talking about their why. Why do they exist? And if you roll back the clock to when Apple was really innovative, their whole marketing approach was based on the tagline of think different. And it was purposefully done that way because then having an Apple device is like a badge of honor to tell the world that you, like them, think differently. You are an innovator. You are different. You stand out. Which is probably why, when you buy an Apple phone case, then there's always a big hole on the back cut out so that the logo can still be seen. It's that status symbol for your market to attract people to you who believe the same things that you believe as a company. So for you, ask yourself these questions. What is your underlying passion? Why did you start this business? Where do you want it to go? What's your ultimate driving force behind this? Other than, becoming immensely wealthy. They need to think on a deeper level than that. to get that emotional response. What's the end goal? Why are you doing this? Is it because you've had a personal experience with the subject matter and that inspired you to create the solution? Why are you doing this? And where do you want the company to go? What's the end goal? What does success look like when this problem in the world is solved, having access to your technology? Because ultimately you're telling the world, telling investors, telling customers in your story, why does anyone care? And the objective of that is, excuse me, is not to relentlessly segment the market and relentlessly bombard your target audience until they submit and buy, as in very old school marketing. The goal is to do business with people that buy into your why. So I apply the same approach to my own company. My why, my reason for creating PBM Consulting, is to share this knowledge that I've amassed over 22 years so that we can create more impact in the world from science and technology. And if people get my approach and they understand why I'm doing this, then they're more likely to attract and come to me. And that seems to be bearing fruit. So I know this approach works. You can see it work for Apple. I know it works for me. And it works as a central core of a really good science and technology company's marketing approach. So the final piece of instruction I will leave you with is, what actually needs to go into your story. In case you think, yeah, Pete's onto something good. Yeah, I need to have a better story, but you reckon you can do this all by yourself. So if that is the case, here are a few pointers. Think about your story as in the purpose for your existing, those questions before, and think about why this is a big enough problem for anyone to want to solve, why it matters and to whom, and get as detailed as you can in the story. It's not just our technology can be bought by hospitals, because last time I checked, a hospital wasn't a person. What sort of people buy your product or service? Understand who your customers, your end users, your buyers are, and the different roles they play. Understand who actually is facing this problem, so that you can then validate that and start to engage them in this process of market building, which is the equivalent of attracting interest from the other side of the valley of death. If you're in front of investors, or if you want to be part of your company presentation, show your passion that you've got for seeing this through. Show how committed you are to it, and you are here for the long term to see this journey through its many twists and turns. Because ultimately, especially if you're at an early stage, that passion and your ability, your credibility is as important to the investor as the gadget, the gizmo that you have, or the business model. All that may change. Your passion, hopefully, should not. And the final thing is, through a sort of knowledge of what alternative approaches there are to solving the problem, including doing nothing, why your company, your offer is the best positioned and best in the world to deliver it. So why your approach, your business model is better than the other approaches that may have been trying to solve this problem in the past. So that you set yourself out as having a clear differentiator in the market that would drive people to you, which is the sort of thing, that sort of competitive advantage that investors are looking for. Now, you'll be unsurprised to hear that this creation of this compelling story can be very difficult, especially if you're at an early stage and there are potentially multiple applications or multiple destinations that your technology company could go. So what I do in my Fit to Fly offer is work with companies to work out exactly what destination they're going for next, and understand where they are right now. What do they have? And how can we together, through a series of workshops and very fast-paced working, how can we together produce that compelling, attractive story around your technology startup? One that attracts the one that attracts the interest and attention from investors, but also tells the world why your company exists, to draw people to you and build that market, so that when you do progress into the more mature levels of your technology or ready to launch, you have a market that's ready, willing, and drooling, waiting for it to come, not just a wall of silence. So the Fit to Fly offer helps you kickstart your marketing around that compelling story of your company, one that wins you the attention of investors and customers. But that may not be your current configuration of company, may not be the ultimate in terms of the value that it could create in the world. And often when investors get to a certain stage, they're looking for a number of different things for your startup to have demonstrated. So if you're going for a scale-up sort of Series A raise, you'll need to show them how much annual recurring revenue you've got, how much growth you've got, your customer lists, your market position, all these other things. So that destination of what your company needs to look like and the best offer that your company could provide, the most attractive investment opportunity that your company could present, is what we work together on through the flight plan process, which is a fast-paced, design sprint-based methodology to achieve that strategic plan that will elevate your company to its most attractive investment proposition and really set the foundations to build a unicorn. And then my final offer, just so I'm showing this for completeness, is final approach. Many founders believe they have the team in place that they can run with the plan that I've given them. And that's great if you can, but if you need certain sort of key skills you don't currently have in your team and you don't want to be employing people, even if it is for share options, you don't want to be having that burden of carrying people until the market has really taken off, then I can help you supplement that team with sort of bought-in expert consultants who are part of my network. So that's what I do in what I call flight path, helping science and technology companies safely arrive at their next strategic destination. So I've told you now about the approach a little bit. I've told you about the problems, the three main problems that exist within marketing and technology startup. So what I haven't done, which is unusual for most of these webinars, is I haven't taken a little bit of time to tell you who I am, who is this weirdo on the internet. So this little bit here is just for me to show you briefly of my sort of background and experience that I am a credible resource for science and technology companies. Because I have been doing this for 22 years at this intersection between business, science and funding, where these genuinely new to the world innovations come from. I've built technology ventures, I've worked in them, I've coached, mentored startups, I've run and designed technology accelerator programs all around the world, driven by this passion to apply science to make an impact in the world, solving problems to make people's lives better. And my approach is very much commercial. I'm the sort of commercial and market partner that many founders work alongside to bring in the perspective of what the market really needs and get as much product market fit alignment as you can before you've invested significant amounts of time actually in the market, finding out and making mistakes. I'm not a technical expert. I don't need to understand the technology, but that's the thing. Neither do your investors, neither do your customers. And the reason why I do this off my own bat is because I was working as a commercial director for an Oxford University spin-out consulting company up until I was nearly killed by a Mercedes driver at 50 miles an hour 2 months before the pandemic hit the UK. So great timing. But I'm here and I've formed a company that helps my clients think differently, get results quicker, and deliver it via short, sharp, impactful interventions that get results. Because as a founder consultant myself, if I don't get my clients results that I can talk about, then what was the point? So I work with those companies where we both believe we can get those big results by working together in very compressed, accelerated timescales, because time is never on your side as a founder. Okay, that's a little bit enough about me. And this mission that I have, I should probably say here, is to share this knowledge that I built up. And this workshop is one of the ways that I have of doing that for free. And if you take the concepts that I've got and you take the principles of the approach for fundraising that I developed called Driven, and you're wildly successful with it on your own steam, fantastic. At least I've helped make another more successful technology company out there. But if you do need help with them, that's where I can come in and I can work with you at a level of investment that you're able to make via consulting and also via training. I want to make more companies into the unicorns of the future and less end up in the bottom of the valley of death. And that's just a repeat of what I just said. So, to summarize where we're at and to give you some sort of tangible steps forward that I hope will be useful to you, we've talked about these big 3 mistakes: spraying and praying, being focused solely on the money, so building the bridge only from one side, and also a mistake in selling the wrong, focusing on selling the wrong part of your company, the product or the firm, the technology itself, rather than the market opportunity. And so these are my kind of takeaway points for you to implement on your own steam, or if you need some help, you know where I am. So if you want people to engage with you, whether that's customers you're trying to build a market for your new technology, whether it's investors you're trying to get excited in it, or both, create stories that put them at the heart of it, because that's what creates that emotional response. When you're using things like social media or email campaigns, target your content not at what you've got, not at what your solution is and how it works and the results you can get from using it, but talk about the thing that at the moment is the only thing that connects you to your prospect, which is the problem itself. And here's where I have to give a little bit of a plug to my friends over at Maverick, who I often refer people to because they are the experts in sort of how to position your offers, whether you're a consultant or a product firm, on social media, especially through LinkedIn. And they use this very simple concept that everyone goes through when we're making a buying decision. First of all, we have ourselves recognition that we have a problem. So to use an example we can all go along with, that problem may be that you're hungry. The outcome is the next logical stage in the decision-making process, which is, for this example, the outcome you want from the problem being solved, which is to feel full, to get some food. The decision. Now, this can obviously be a very lengthy process depending on the industry you're in, or it could be very quick. The decision-making process is, what are the alternatives that are available to me right now? So going back to our example, is there food in the fridge that we can reheat? Is there stuff in the freezer that we could cook? Or do we decide that we want to go out shopping and get something in? Or do we decide, actually, we're really tired, we've had a long day, we're going to do a takeaway. It's takeaway treat of the month. So that's the decision that they'll go for. And then finally, when you've made that decision that the takeaway is what you want, finally, then you progress to the solution, which is what sort of takeaway. And that's where any kind of marketing messages that I know, here I'm, Bill's Chinese takeaway, offering hot food, 20 minutes delivery. Here's where your audience is actually interested enough to respond to that type of promotional about us message, promoting the solution. But the problem is, when you focus only on the solution, if you look at the 100% of people who may have the problem that this Bill's Chinese takeaway solves for, then the people that are actually, they've gone through the fact they've recognized they've got a problem, they know they want the outcome of being full, they've decided that a takeaway is for them, and now they're out in the market searching for a takeaway, that is only 6% of the total market. And you'll never get to 100, because obviously there are people that don't realize they've got a problem. And trying to sell food to someone who's not hungry is a very difficult thing to do, given our example. But if you start talking about the problem, you can capture up to about 70% of people's interest. Because if that message of, we're by Bill's Chinese takeaway, discount offer today only, etc., lands on their doorstep when they are feeling hungry, they've recognized they've got the problem, then they won't have to go through all the other decision making. They might be tempted with your particular advert if they see it at an earlier stage. So that's why when you're talking about your science and technology company, don't focus on what your solution is and how it works and what benefits you can get from it and how much better it is. Those are kind of decision making type criteria. Focus it instead on what the problem is that you're actually addressing. So you're talking to those people who've got a problem and can immediately see that you're a person that understands the problem they're going through and therefore could be a good person to work with, buy from, or consume from. So that's why this approach works. And if you stick around long enough on LinkedIn, you'll see me promoting a few of my case studies from where I've gone through the Fit to Fly process to getting that compelling story for a company. And this quote here from the CEO of TCS just helps illustrate how much I can accelerate the development of a compelling offer from your company to the market in a fraction of the time that it might take you to do on your own. So my final takeaway points obviously are addressing those three key problems we talked about before. Number one, please, please, please stop spraying and praying. Cold emails, cold DMs to investors you haven't gone through, you don't understand what they invest in, you don't understand whether this would be something that they even might consider, just send them an email anyway. Stop that. It wastes investors' time, it wastes your time, it creates a lot of anxiety and burnout and extra work, chasing up people who are just too polite to say no earlier on. To get the sort of investor attention that you want from the type of investors that will really help you accelerate your company, create that compelling story to appeal to them that creates that emotional response that you're looking for. My third point, don't build it like Kevin Costner in the film Field of Dreams. Don't build it on the expectation that once you have done, they will just flock to you, they being the market. They won't unless you get them involved early. So creating sort of beta stage group, building awareness in the market of your potential offer around the problem you solve, doing that early to build that market and getting customer validation that you're onto a good thing, that's the sort of thing that you should be doing as early as humanly possible. Number four is change the way that you approach investment. And if you want to know more about that, you can either pick up my guide on LinkedIn called Driven, or attend my Beat the Odds workshop, which is 2 weeks from now. When you're using my approach to create awareness of your science and technology companies from the other side of the bridge to attract commercial interest, create meaningful value-adding content that promotes your company based around that problem you're solving. So use that to build an audience of willing buyers so that you've got people who can provide early validation that the concepts are right, that you can provide, you can turn them into advocates, people who talk warmly about your brand and your company, because that's the sort of thing you need to get that snowballing of market adoption once you get closer to the market. Build that audience of willing buyers who get why your company exists. And then and only then start to engage with prospects that fit your profile on LinkedIn, whether that's targeting investors individually on a personal level, or whether it's trying to build more early stage customers. But don't rely on a pre-formatted, templated type email or DM on social media to a person you haven't taken the time to get to know first. It doesn't work that way, and it just ends up annoying people when you're talking about your offer and your solution when you haven't even qualified that they've got a problem. That's my advice to you to the way that you can implement this approach, stand out to win, to attract investor attention and customer attention in your technology startup. These are the steps, practical steps you can take today. And if that's been helpful to you, brilliant. Then this workshop's been useful and been value added. If you need particular help, then you know exactly where I am. I live on LinkedIn, so you can always send me a message there. And at the end, I'll give you a quick QR code that you can scan with your phone if you'd like to book a quick meeting with me just for a no obligation chat. So as a thank you to those who pre-registered for this webinar today, I'm going to send you a follow-up email with some free resources to you. And that'll be some more information about my Driven approach, a video on the #1 skill investors need and the need to create pre-flight clarity in your technology company's business plan, so you can clearly appeal to the investors you're looking for, and as well as some other resources you might find useful, a way of evaluating how well your company currently aligns with the market needs. I'll also pop in the slides and recording from today and some other links to my LinkedIn feed and other social media. And that'll come across in your inbox. If you're watching this on LinkedIn Live and want to receive that, it's just a link I can email to you. Just please drop your email into the chat, or you can do that to me privately, or DM me it on LinkedIn if you'd rather, and I'll happily send you a copy or a link to this folder where all these resources are. You can access for free at any time. Okay, so thank you again for attending today. I appreciate your time and effort in attending amongst the many webinars and workshops there are here on LinkedIn. I hope I've provided some value and some tangible things you can take away and implement for yourselves to improve the success of your company. But if you want to talk them through, or if you want to just say hi, or you'd like to discuss more about how I might be able to help you accelerate that process, then please use your camera phone, scan this QR code, and it'll take you to my booking page where you can book an obligation 15-minute chat with me, and we can see if it's right for you. I promise no high pressure sell. I want to work with the customers where we both believe we can get the results that we both need. And I will not be sort of forcing a solution onto anyone before I've established they've got a problem that I can solve. So that's been me. I'm Pete Moores, Chief Problem Solver here at PBM Consulting. I've now got about a few minutes left for questions, if anybody wants to pop them into the chat. I'm guessing, as you've all been quite quiet so far, that might not happen. But if there are, please pop them into the chat for me now. And if there are no further questions, thank you again, and enjoy the rest of your evening. Enjoy the rest of the football. And I'll see you again sometime soon, either at the Stand Out to Win workshop, which runs on the first Monday of each month, or my specialist one on fundraising called Beat the Odds, Navigate Your Company's Fastest Way to Success, which runs on the opposing 2 week. So that'll be, I think the next one will probably be more likely January now. Thank you again. Have a good day.